Hello and welcome everyone. My name is Candace Badgett and I'm an international trustee of the global organization that offers transcendental meditation to women. So this is our second webinar in a series in which we have been discussing our unique nature as women and how we can promote more happiness in our lives. And in our previous webinar, we were talking about how important it is for us as women to keep our hearts open and flowing in love and appreciation. And there are many reasons why this is key to our happiness and fulfillment in life. We discussed this extensively in our last webinar. But essentially, it's because all women have a mother's heart. We have a maternal nature, whether we have children or not. And in this, we could say that we are a very capable instrument of emotion. Now, today we want to focus not so much on why we have this extraordinary emotional intelligence, this emotional capability, this natural ability to access the most powerful levels of the mind, which just happen to be the subtler levels of feeling and emotion. But rather, what we're going to be focusing on today is how we can make sure that we don't forfeit this precious asset that will ultimately be the means by which we as women will find the deepest fulfillment in our lives. So we're going to look at how we can prevent our hearts from shutting down, something that often happens as a result of having experienced the inevitable disappointments in life, in having had our heart broken or our feelings hurt. So we want to see how we can keep that flow of love and happiness and how we can create the kind of resilience that allows us to always come back to a baseline of happiness, even if we experience some disappointment in life. It all comes down to how can we keep our hearts open and at the same time protect ourselves from having our hearts hurt. And I think that as women, this is one of our most significant challenges in life. So today I would like to share 5 fundamental ways in which we can keep our hearts open and maximize the experience of love and joy in our lives. Now, the first of these fundamentals is that we really have to stay rested. And I know that this seems like a near to impossible task today when we're all juggling so many responsibilities, but we have to at least try to make it a priority to avoid becoming completely exhausted and burned out. And this is because fatigue compromises one of our greatest assets as women, and that is our ability of subtler perception. And subtler perception is just another word for intuition. Women have an innate capability to sense the truth. And we often express a capability of being able to perceive the good and the pure and the beautiful and the divine. And these finer values of life that make life glorious, that make life refined, these can really only be appreciated by the more subtle and more powerful levels of the mind. But this natural ability that we have to access these more subtle aspects of ourself, this becomes compromised when we're tired. So it's truly to our advantage to be alert to getting enough rest. And what this means is getting enough sleep every night, and it means regularly taking days off to be able to deeply relax. Now, the second guideline, which we also discussed in our last webinar, is that really women need to learn transcendental meditation and to be regular in our TM practice. So transcendental meditation, or TM, is a mental technique whereby we allow the mind to settle down and experience more and more quiet more peaceful levels of the mind until we transcend the thinking process altogether. We go beyond the thinking process. We go beyond our thoughts altogether. Now, this naturally brings to mind the question, if I go beyond thoughts, aren't I just going to be asleep or unconscious? But actually, there is a fourth state of consciousness available to human awareness. We all know waking, dreaming, and sleeping, but there's a fourth state of consciousness in which the mind can be completely silent, completely still, without thoughts, and yet maximally alert, maximally awake. Now, the reason that this experience is so compelling, it's so fulfilling, is because it's an experience of deep peace. This is not an empty silence. It's not an inert silence. This is a silence that is full, and it's full of peace, and it's full of contentment, and it's full of a self-sufficient happiness that does not depend on anything outside of ourselves. So we can see this is an experience where the mind feels that it has come back home. And once we have this experience, what we realize is that this is what we are looking for in everything that we do in life. That this is what every desire is propelling us to find. It's this inner experience of self-sufficient happiness and fulfillment. Now, this experience obviously provides us with an emotional sense of fulfillment. But interestingly enough, there's something else that's going on here as well, and that is this deep silence and deep rest on the level of the mind creates a corresponding rest in the body that is extremely deep and allows the body to begin to throw off those deep-rooted stresses that our sleep at night has not been able to get rid of. Now, these are those deep stresses that came as a result of life's disappointments, of a broken heart, of hurt feelings. So to be able to remove that stress, release that stress, this releases the constraints that have been imposed on our ability to feel love and joy. So this technique is a gift for those of us who were born with an incredible capability for experiencing love and joy. So our TM practice keeps removing the fatigue that's responsible for disconnecting us from these finer values of the mind that constitute our deepest sense of self. And in addition, as I was saying, TM is the most effective way to remove stress. And women absolutely have to have a way to release stress, not just manage stress. And this is because research is showing that stress impacts women more severely. And as an example, since women have entered the workforce in droves, women's heart disease has skyrocketed. So it's clear that stress is becoming a bigger and bigger issue for women, and it has health implications, both mental and physical health implications for women. So it's essential that women have a means of releasing stress. Now, another important reason why it's so important for us as women to be regular with our TM practice is because we have a more active prefrontal cortex. Now, the prefrontal cortex is the CEO of the brain. It's the decision-making center in our brain. And if this area of the brain over-engages, becomes too active, it can give rise to worry and to anxiety and to insomnia and even to depression. So we can see how we're susceptible to this because we already have a prefrontal cortex that is more active. Now, when our prefrontal cortex, our active prefrontal cortex, is functioning optimally, then it gives us the ability to make the right kinds of decisions that support our process of self-actualization. And TM is uniquely effective when it comes to promoting the optimal functioning of the prefrontal cortex, as indicated by much of the National Institutes of Health funded and published research on transcendental meditation. Now, the third insight that I want to share is the fact that we as women need to structure a situation in life where we feel protected. Now, this means different things to different women, but the point is that we should feel safe. And this is because if we feel threatened on either a subtle level or in a very real sense, then we go into a fight or flight response mode. And this produces a continual flow of stress hormones that undermine the higher functionings that a woman can normally access quite easily. So it really is, once again, to our advantage that we do everything that we can in life to feel protected. For women to thrive, we need to have the ability, the opportunity to be able to nourish others, and we also need to feel safe and protected. So the fourth guideline that we are going to take a look at here is that we have to allow our emotions to remain settled. And we have to do this in order to be able to more easily access those more subtle and more powerful levels of the mind. So being a capable instrument of emotion doesn't mean that we should indulge in the emotional drama of life. Being a capable instrument of emotion means that we can access the subtle messages that are coming to us deep from our intuition, from our deepest feelings and emotions, from our body, and from the environment around us. And if we can do this, we become like a finely tuned barometer that can pick up the subtle aspects of every situation that we find ourselves in life, and whereby we can understand exactly what is needed to create balance and progress and harmony within ourselves and within our environment. So we keep our emotions settled and calm because this is how we grow more powerful. And this is how we can stay anchored to our inner compass and thereby be able to successfully steer ourselves through any and all challenging circumstances in life. Now, once again, adequate rest and transcendental meditation are the tools that allow us to do this most easily, naturally, and spontaneously. So, once again, we just want to reflect on that question we asked in the beginning, and that is, how can our hearts flow in love, but at the same time be protected from hurt? And the answer is that as we become more and more self-sufficient in generating our happiness from within, the heart will be able to sustain a greater degree of openness and at the same time a greater strength that will allow the heart to be invincible, to be protected from hurt and from disappointment. So the last insight that I'd like to share is an appreciation of some of the general do's and don'ts that can augment and support our meditation practice such that we will easily be able to keep our hearts wide open. And the first one is that we must do our best to do what we know to be right and not to do what we know to be wrong. And this is because when we do something that we know is not right, that we know is wrong, this creates a coarseness in our minds and hearts. And this is how our hearts begin to become hardened. This is how we begin to become a little bit cynical or sarcastic. It's how we begin to become a bit jaded. So this is why we want to be very alert to avoid doing what we know to be wrong. Now, another important caution is that it's important to refrain from entertaining negativity or dwelling on negativity. Now, this doesn't mean that we can't allow any negativity to come into our minds. Of course, negativity will come to mind sometimes. This is natural. But what we want to avoid is dwelling or obsessing on these negative thoughts and feelings, which means we have to be a little bit alert and we have to be able to make that choice to let go of those negative thoughts and move on to something a little bit more positive. Now, along the same line, it's best to refrain from speaking against other people or gossiping about others. Now, this definitely takes a little bit of discipline and willpower, but the reality is we're not really in a position to judge anyone. And the other reason is that when we speak ill of other people, when we gossip about negative things that other people have done or negative qualities that we perceive in other people, we actually imbibe those negative qualities ourselves. There's a principle that what we put our attention on grows stronger in our life. And this is an example of how that happens. So by avoiding gossiping and avoiding speaking ill of others, we actually are protecting ourselves from doing damage to our own capacity for love and joy in our lives. So by avoiding wrongdoing and avoiding obsessing about negative things and by avoiding speaking against others, we're protecting our hearts and we're maintaining our natural ability to experience love and joy. Now, all of these recommendations are so much easier to follow when we're rested and if we can avoid straining in life and when we maintain a healthy and balanced daily routine in life, and most especially when we're regular in our practice of transcending our busy and often agitated minds through our TM practice. I'd like to conclude by offering a perspective that is a feminine perspective, and that is that joy and heart flowing in love and appreciation, this is the foundation for satisfying accomplishments in life and for fulfilling relationships in life. But in our society today, there is a prevailing belief that accomplishment in the world is the basis for enjoying happiness and fulfillment, and that based on our success in our undertakings in life and our endeavors in life, based on this success, then we'll be worthy of praise and love and appreciation, and only then will we be fulfilled. But the fact is that many successful people are unhappy, and this is pervasive enough for us to know that achievement-based happiness cannot be our truth. As women, we must embrace the fact that it's our inner happiness that must be cultivated first and foremost in order to find fulfillment in life. And that inner happiness is what's foundational to successful relationships and to a meaningful sense of accomplishment in life, and not the other way around. This is a feminine perspective, and the world needs a good dose of this perspective. This nourishing value of life that constitutes our essential nature as women, it needs to be more prevalent in the world. And this can be accomplished most effectively by simply accessing the self-sufficient happiness and the nourishing power available to all of us in the depths of our own being. So I want to thank all of you for joining us today, and I hope you'll join us in our following webinars in which we'll continue to discuss women's unique assets, women's unique nature, and how we can leverage this for our own happiness and fulfillment in life. So thank you again for joining us, and we look forward to seeing you next time.